Welcome to the Hetfield House. I'm Don Jeka, your host for this program, and this is the second in our series featuring this wonderful old house. Today, we have a special guest, a longtime resident of Mountainside, whom many of you will recognize. Please welcome Art Brahm.
Hi, Don. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. It's
Good.
always nice to come back to Mountainside.
Artie left Mountainside a few years ago, but agreed to return for this special program, and we thank him for that. And as you will see, he has been a part of this town's history for many years. So let's get started, Art. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions.
Okay.
Okay?
Sure.
When did you first come to Mountainside?
When I was born. I was born over in a house over in Central Avenue, on the corner of Beach Avenue and Central Avenue.
Great.
In 1935.
1935. What are your first memories of the town, Art?
I guess living over on Central Avenue, not in that house, but one down at the other end. I guess we moved there just before I went to kindergarten, and those are my first memories of and also my grandmother's house over on Cedar Avenue, where Eleanor still lives, who's on the committee.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my first memories. And my grandmother's house, the only way you could get to it was on two dirt roads. If one was too muddy, you took the other one. And you had to cross a bridge, which had a wooden bridge, plank bridge, which had no railings on the side. And I just remember when my dad went over to visit, I would duck my head down because I was afraid he'd go off the bridge.
And what school did you attend?
Mountainside School. It's called Mountainside Grammar School at the time, on Route 22, which is now the Borough Complex.
Mm-hmm. And how many in your graduating class?
There were 15.
And what year was that, Art?
1949.
1949. And then where did you go to high school?
In Springfield, Jonathan Dayton.
Mm-hmm. And just give me a flavor of what it was like growing up in Mountainside in those days.
It was a very rural town. Across the street from us was a 90-acre farm, the Weber Farm. And it was always fun in the summertime to run through the corn, and hide, and sometimes going over and help Mr. Weber pick up his baskets of tomatoes and put them on the truck, and so we could just get a ride back to the house and then unloading. We didn't get paid for it, but it was just fun.
And when did your parents move into town?
My father's family moved here in 1919. Actually, I think they lived in Westfield on the Mountainside border, and then they built a house in Mountainside in 1923. That's when my father, and then when they were married, then my mother moved into town.
Mm-hmm.
The same in 1933.
Do you still have relatives living here?
Yes, Eleanor Pfeiffer
right.
is on the committee, and she still lives in the house, I guess our grandmother built. And there's, I don't know if any others. There's probably some down the ways a bit,
mm-hmm.
but.
And where did you meet your wife?
I met her in school. I knew her in grammar school, but I never paid any attention to her. But in high school, then things started to change a little bit. But actually, she lived on New Providence Road, and I lived on Central Avenue, and there was nothing in between. It was all woods. So you never went to the other side of town. And the same thing with Summit Road. There was nothing in between there. There were no roads.
Mm-hmm.
So you just stayed in your neighborhood and played with the kids in the neighborhood.
And where did her family live?
They lived on New Providence Road up here in a farm. Her grandparents bought in 1917, and they had a 20-acre
mm-hmm.
farm and a dairy farm that didn't do that well, so they had to give it up in time. But when I sold the house, we bought it in 1960. It had been in the family for 83 years.
And Artie, how many children do you have?
We have three.
Three.
2 boys and a girl.
And what do they do now?
Rick is a teacher, a 5th grade teacher in Dover, and he also teaches at Centenary College. And Debbie is a teacher up in New Hampshire. And David, the youngest, works for Bristol Myers in New Jersey.
And they all attended school locally here?
Yes, they all went through the Mountainside school system and Jonathan Dayton High School.
What are some of like your fondest memories of living in Mountainside?
Living on Central Avenue, the pavement ended at our house, and then there was a dirt road that went up the mountain. And in the wintertime, we used to go up there and sleigh ride down. There weren't many cars to interfere with us. We used to go, nighttime, daytime, anytime, and taking hikes up to Surprise Lake or fishing down in Echo Lake Park, playing ball over in Echo Lake Park, pickup games. There wasn't anything organized. Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts were a big thing. Boy Scouts was a great thing. It was just really great. I loved it, and we did a lot of camping and a lot of activities. We did in town. There weren't that many, but we just had a lot of fun. We used to meet at the Mountainside school over here in the auditorium.
Didn't you tell me once that when the troops were coming back from, I guess, the Second World War, that you guys were in school and you...
Yeah, we used to, when the convoys would be coming from, I guess, Camp Kilmer, or is my guess, I don't know, remember that, but they would come up Route 22 to go to New York to the Brooklyn Navy Yard to go overseas, and there'd be maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours worth of convoy coming by, and they would bring all the school children out on the bank, and we would sit there and wave to them, and I think that was kind of a morale thing for the troops, because they were going overseas.
Now let's talk a minute about where you worked most of your life.
Oh, I worked at Blywise Liquors, but it was a general store from way back, and I started working there when I was 17, and it was a grocery store with a small liquor department in the back. And then eventually they got rid of the groceries and turned it all into a liquor store.
As I recall, having gone to that store myself from time to time, that you were like Glenn Blywise's pretty much right-hand man on the wine department. Is that right?
Yeah, we had a good rapport, and he was a great wine person, a great salesman, and I really enjoyed working for him. And I did, kept track of the inventory for him, and backed him up wherever he needed help.
When did you join the historic committee? I know you were one of the earliest members.
Yeah, I was. They formed it in 1977, the mayor and council, and I walked in to pay my taxes one day, and they asked me if I'd like to be on it. I guess because I lived in an old house which was dated back to 1840, and I said okay. But I thought to myself, what does Mountainside have? That was my first thought. And little did I know what we were going to get into and how much history there was, and how many people were really interested in knowing about it and supporting us.
And how long was the committee in existence when the house was moved?
8 years.
8 years.
Yep. 1977 we were formed, and then 1985 we had the house moved.
Can you give us a little background on how the decision was made to move the house and how it was financed?
Yeah, we found out about the house. The house was going to be torn down, and a manufacturing building was going to be built there. We thought it would be a great idea if we could do something with the house, and we. I don't remember. I think we first, as a committee, we came over here and looked at the house when it was down on Route 22. We went through it and talked about it, and then we went to the mayor and council and told them, you created us, now we're going to do a little job. Are you going to help us out? And after a lot of meetings and a lot of hashing around, and the mayor and council said, okay, we'll pay for it, the move, you find a place for it. Well, we were considering all different sites in all different places, and somehow whoever it was decided here, next to the library, which was the perfect place. And then it was, how are we going to get it here past that bridge? Well, they figured out to cut a swath in front of the bridge and bring it through, which they did. But the town told us, once it's there, it's your responsibility to take care of it and restore it and maintain it and paint it, whatever has to be done. And that was our job from there on.
I think many of you watching will recall that there is a videotape on the movement of the house, which we featured down here from time to time. And anybody that wants to can always have access to that and look at it when you're here. Back to Artie now. How do you think that the changes have affected Mountainside? The general changes in society have affected this town?
I think it's grown into a beautiful town, and when I was a kid growing up, if anybody had any problems, the town just circled around you and helped you out. And I've seen that happen here in this town all the years I lived here. It still exists. It's a small town, and clubs get together and they just help each other out. At least that's the way it's been, I saw, and that's why I kept loving the town. And you still knew everybody, and not everybody, but you came across a lot of people. And one of the things I miss after I move and still miss is you have your friends here that you have your acquaintances, and you have people you just say hi to. And those are the things that you really miss, because you don't have that buildup of all those years of friendship.
That was going to be my next question, of what you missed since you moved to, I believe, Montague in 2000. Mm-hmm. But I think you've already answered that, so that's fine.
By the way, I was drafted in the service in 1958 and crossed the Atlantic on one of those World War II troop ships, which a lot of the troops probably went on when I was waving to them.
Do you remember the name of that?
Yeah, the USS Randall.
USS Randall.
The same one that Elvis Presley was on.
Oh, at the same time?
At the same time, yeah.
Oh, good.
I met him a few times and talked to him. He was a nice guy.
Good. Did he sing to you, Artie?
No.
No.
Colonel Parker wouldn't let him sing in the service.
No. Artie, let's talk a little bit about some of the landmarks that everyone's probably familiar with, but we don't know the background of necessarily. For instance, what about the Mountainside Inn?
That was there from back in the 30s, even before I was born, probably, or shortly thereafter. There was a bar down below and a really nice restaurant over it, which I did work at one time washing dishes when I was about 14. And there was a bowling alley there with 11 alleys, which was pretty popular at the time. Bowling was a really big thing in the 40s and 50s. Mm-hmm. And I also worked setting up pins at night when I was in high school.
And then there was La Faire along 22.
Right. When I was a kid, that was just an old farmhouse bar, again, called Jack and Jones.
Oh. And then we had the Somerset Bus Company garage that was...
Right. They ran local buses to Westfield, and I remember going to Westfield to the movies all the time. My parents would give me 50 cents, 10 cents each way for the bus, 20 cents for the movie, and 10 cents for candy.
But then I believe the Somerset Bus Company ran right into Manhattan, too.
They did. They started in late 40s. They started to run into New York, which was really very nice.
And then we had that, what was it, like an observation tower up in the reservation?
There was where the water tower is now, there was a wooden observation tower. Actually, the one I knew was the second one that was there, and it was made out of wood. It looked like telephone poles or something, but it was pretty high. And that was another place where we used to hike up to and take a look around.
And Crone's Tavern, of course.
Right, that was on the corner where that gas station, Texaco station, is that what it is, Texaco station?
Yeah.
There was an old, home like the Hetfield house that was made into a bar. And then in the back there was a guy that started a pizza parlor. And I remember going up there when I was maybe 14 on my bicycle and getting a pizza for $1 and had to pay 5 cents for the box.
And then as the community expanded, of course, the religious elements had to make accommodations. And I think that's when Our Lady of Lourdes Church was built. And
Yeah, that's when Weber started selling the property. You know, he was ready to retire, I guess, and he sold the property to the school, where Deerfield School is, and Our Lady of Lourdes. And I don't remember the dates when they were. Deerfield was in the early 50s, maybe 1952, somewhere around there. And the church came shortly after that.
right, and then I think the Community Presbyterian Church up on Deer Path, that was around 1954 or something
Right,
like that.
right.
Yeah. And what about when Friendly's moved into town?
Yeah, that was
First of the fast food type of thing.
Yeah, they did a nice job though. It was a nice building, and they had a nice food fair there, and it was pretty popular until they closed.
And now it's this property of Valley National Bank, I
Right,
guess.
right.
Yeah. And what did, as you recall, what were the main entertainment activities in town?
You mean for adults or kids
for
adults?
adults,
I guess, most people, stayed home, or they had picnics. They had relatives over coming from wherever they were. Like my mother's parents relatives came from Elizabeth, and they were always excited to come out to the country, instead of their pavement areas. And that was always a big thing. We always had picnics and such.
And I think there was a bowling alley there, as you said, at
Mountainside
Inn. And then Heckles Grove?
That was a picnic area that organizations would, I guess, rent out and come out and have. There were no buildings. It was kind of an outside thing. I know my father's hunt and fishing club used to have picnics over there. They have clam bakes and corn and such things.
And we're often asked what some of the street name derivations were. Do you know any of that background?
Some were named for people in town, like the Heckles. There's Heckle Drive. Woodacres Drive was named after the house that I lived in, was Woodacres Farm. Where else are we? Orchard Road, I guess there must have been some orchards there.
Deer Path or
Deer
New
Path.
Providence Road?
No, I don't. Well, New Providence Road was one of the main roads from, I guess, Westfield, and it was originally called On the Road to New Providence, and it went all the way up to where the Nature Museum is, and then on over the mountain to New Providence.
Mm-hmm. Artie, can we talk for a minute about, even though it is a small area, about how the center of Mountainside started, that row of stores?
My recollection is the older part where Maxwell's shop is. That section was built by the Maxwells, but I don't know exactly when. It was maybe late 20s, early 30s,
It extended all the way up to where there was the drugstore and the liquor store on the corner.
Yes, that was all built at the same time.
Yeah.
And then I believe in the early 50s, the other section was where the Japanese restaurant is, and the florist, and
Oh yeah, actually, one of those shops, Christopher's, they've been in town a long time
Right.
also. Art, you mentioned before that in the early days, there was a huge expanse of land here, mostly farms and things like that. And how did people get around then? And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, in order to get out to go to town or to Westfield, you went down Central Avenue or Summit Road or New Providence Road to Route 22. And the divider wasn't there at the time. There was a flat divider, and you waited for the traffic so you could scoot across the one lane and then get in the other lane, depending on which way you wanted to go. And coming back, you had to do the same thing. There wasn't any. There was just farmland and forest between the three roads. You could go up and go around, way up to Tracy Drive and then go across, or Route 22. There was also Zimmerman's Farm on Central Avenue, which is Ruthie Gunzy's place.
Mm-hmm.
We used to spend a lot of time at the Zimmerman farm, they had cows, and they had a spring there which was, you could see bubbling out of the ground. It was ice cold on a 95-degree day. You drink a few sips of that and you got a head rush. It was so cold. And it ran down to the neighbor, Skidmore's, and he had a pool there from that spring, which we used to go swimming in, and it was pretty cold, even on a hot day, because that water was freezing. At Ruthie's house also, and her brother, we used to go down there and play hide and seek and kick the can in the barns, and I remember laying in the trough and staring up at the cow's mouth, hiding, trying not to get caught. Well, we call her Ruthie now. Hi, Schnooky.
And I think that to the credit of some of the town fathers who were paying a lot of attention to the future development of the town, and when they set up the regulations and rules about what you could build and what you couldn't build, and established that corridor along Route 22 that separates Mountainside, that showed a lot of wisdom for the future, I think.
If you ever drive down Route 22 from Plainfield into Union, this is the only town that has beautiful lawns and beautiful commercial buildings, and they're well kept. You don't find the ragamatag building that you do further on.
Further east on Route 22.
The town fathers from the very beginning all the way up till now have done just a beautiful job.
And that's part of what makes Mountainside the town that it is today, really.
Oh yeah, definitely. And the school system, they had some, we had a teacher that used to take us to the Metropolitan Opera on class trips into New York, and museums, and so we had a lot of nice exposure, even though it was just a, so to speak, farm town.
And even the planning of the schools, where we had originally one school which turned into 3 schools, and then back to 2 schools, and now it's probably 3 schools again, I think.
Right.
Yeah. But all of that shows planning, good planning.
Good planning.
Yeah.
I can see that from the town where I live now. They're having some problems, and comparison, but there's no comparison. This town just did great. It really did, and I'm really happy with what I see here from what I saw when I was a kid. I'm very happy with what I see here.
Well, that about wraps it up for this time, and I want to thank every one of you for joining us, and I want to thank especially Artie, our guest today.
My pleasure.
And thank you all for joining us in this program. By the way, if you would like to be a part of Mountainside's history, your own family, you can send in your photographs and other memorabilia to be considered for inclusion in a book that is currently being written. And all you have to do is send the material to us. Until the next time then, thank you for joining us, and goodbye from all of us here at the Hetfield House.